Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to Meet the Innovator. This is our live stream series right here on the Sound Effects Facebook page. And thank you all who are joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mona Jhaveri. I'm the founder and director of Sound Effects. And Sound Effects is a relatively new cancer charity. We support innovators who are working on solutions for cancer, as well as other diseases. And we also strategically partner with emerging musical artists who help us raise awareness, get the word out, raise funds. And we're extremely grateful to our musicians who have aligned with our mission. So the purpose of Meet the Innovator is basically to allow you to meet innovators, specifically biotech innovators. And these are the folks who are actively working on new treatments, new solutions, new tests, new diagnostics, screening tools, all the sort of tools that are going to help us combat disease. In fact, as we sit here in the thick of a pandemic, these are the tools that we badly need to combat this issue and to get us out of lockdown and back to our normal lives. Clearly today is a moment to really appreciate those people who are in fact working on these types of solutions. At Sound Effects, we believe that biotech innovators are key to combating disease. In fact, we feel that too many of them are not known, and I think this is something that we want to change. They're not known and they're underfunded, and this is a problem because if great ideas don't get funded, they don't benefit anybody. And so Sound Effects is changing this. We think that people who are interested in change need to interact and be introduced and support the very people who are working on new tools and new solutions for cancer as well as other diseases. So with that, I want to launch Meet the Innovator, and I'm going to introduce our guest for today. But before I do, if you are watching this live, please leave in the comments who you are, where you're watching, and if you have a comment, a thought, a question, please let us know in the comments. Because after the Q&A, we'd love to entertain them. So with that, I'm going to bring on our first guest here. Hi there, Richard.
Hi, Mona. Great to see you again.
Great to see you again. How are you doing?
Really good week. Thanks. How about for you?
Excellent. All is good as at our end. So I'm here to introduce you, Richard Brand with Geneius Biotechnology. And Richard is part of the founding team at Geneius, and they are working on a T-cell immunotherapy. But before we actually get into the details of this immunotherapy, I want to talk about immunotherapy in general, because I think for a lot of people, it's well understood that when we get diagnosed with cancer, the frontline treatments are surgery, chemo, and radiation therapy. In fact, we've been fighting cancer with these three tools for decades now. So we're all familiar with it. But in November, I believe it's November 2017, immunotherapies were approved by the FDA. And these are not just any immunotherapies, these are very specific. And in fact, immunotherapy is not something new per se. Back in the 19th century, William Coley introduced the Coley's toxin, and by way of introducing an infection to help stimulate the immune system so that it would destroy cancer. Today's immunotherapies obviously are more granular, and the current ones involve a specific cell called the T cell. And I'd be really grateful if you could explain what are today's immunotherapies like, what are the pros, what are the cons, and just really just trying to make the public more familiar with immunotherapies.
Yeah, well, the idea makes sense because we're trying to, as a science, move away from injecting toxins into the body, right? So the approach with radiation, of course, is to hope to kill the cancer cell, but not have the radiation hit other cells that are healthy, right? And then chemo, we know, kills fast-growing cells. A tumor is a fast-growing cell, so that is beneficial. But unfortunately, white blood cells are also a fast-growing cell, so it also devastates our white blood cells. We need that to prevent infections. So then you have to take another drug to re-stimulate your white blood cells. So those are toxics. Immuno approach is, number one, all of us have mutations every day. And fortunately, our immune systems dispense with them and dispose with them, and we're fine. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work. Our immune system lets us down, and then we develop a cancer. So the idea for the immunotherapy approach was really to stimulate those of our immune systems that are underactive and stimulate them to attack and kill the cancer. A predecessor to what you mentioned in 17, beginning in sales of 2015, there were something called a PD-1 blocker, a checkpoint blocker. And that's now effective for 20% of the patients. Merck has a product, Bristol Myers has a product. And even though it's only 20% of the patients and started in 2015, I think total sales last year for the two companies was $11 billion. So a huge blockbuster, even though only appropriate for 20% of the patients. This is what helped President Jimmy Carter, but it doesn't help 80% of the patients. And then what you referenced even more recently, Novartis and Gilead, after acquiring Kite, have a product called CAR, C-A-R, T cells. And that may be a little bit overkill. They've actually added a foreign antigen substance to the tip of the T cell, kind of like a nuclear warhead, and then inject it into the body. But by doing so, it would be rejected as foreign unless you've completely eliminated our immune system, including our lympho glands. And that is fraught with risk. So that's been a whiz-bang scientific project that actually got approved really quickly because it's highly effective. But for 30% of the patients, it causes way overactive immune systems such that it could kill you. And it also, in other patients, creates dementia. So those patients have to be treated in one of the 16 intensive care units around the country, because if you get that reaction, you don't have time to spare. You need to be right there to be treated. The toxicity, and as a result of being treated there, it adds to the cost. But also, it was rushed to market because it's effective, but it ends up costing upwards towards $1 million. And so the Medicare is reimbursing at the level of $180,000. And other insurance companies have said they don't want to get into the argument, do we reimburse or don't we reimburse? They say, yeah, we reimburse, but they really slow pedal it and say the patient has to meet exactly 100% of the specifications until we reimburse. And they also slow the decision. That maybe means that the patient progresses to a point where they can't benefit, and then the insurer's off the hook. It's nobody's fault. What we have there with those companies or those products is a great science that really was moved fast through the scientific lab without concern about how do you manufacture it until after it was produced and approved. And now they're backtracking, trying to bring the cost down, but they got a long way to go.
Right. So it sounds, though, that the reason it was approved and has been fast-tracked is because, in fact, there have been, I guess, miraculous remissions. People have gotten better and sustained. So that's the big, huge pro. I guess the con, it sounds like it's the toxicity, the cost, the fact that not everybody's eligible, and the fact that if you are eligible and you do take the immunotherapy or participate in it, it's not clear that you're going to get better.
Right.
You could go through a lot and not get better.
Well, one point's true and another point's not true. It has been effective, but it hasn't been lasting because once your immune system starts to repair itself, then it sees this foreign antigen and then rejects it. So the effect has been 18 months, but 18 months can be a godsend, right? I mean, that can get you to another, grandchild's or child's graduation or to a wedding. And also by then, maybe something else has come along. Maybe, our product is approved and it can have a 5-year duration with the same effectiveness of like a 70% response rate in patients, where 50% have it completely eliminated, the cancer. And then in our case, that cancer is eliminated for 5 years for half those patients.
So tell us why the Genius technology is an improvement to what we currently have.
Yeah, our basis is to work only with natural T cells. So we're not adding that nuclear warhead to the tip of the T cell. We don't need it. As we know, our bodies are killing cancer mutations every day. But what we're doing is we're finding that for those patients who are getting cancer, if we look at their systems, their blood, what's happened then is the cancer is suppressing those specific T cells, or some other way they're submissive and they're not being as prominent as they should be. And so we would take that patient's blood draw, a simple blood draw, and through 3 one-week processes, we amplify those specific T cells that are the best at killing that particular cancer. And then we freeze it, ship it back to the local community oncologist, and then the patient gets 2 1/2-hour infusions on day 1 and day 14 in their local community. No need for a ICU, because the only side effect so far seen in patients has been 2 weeks of flu-like symptoms. So none of the dementia, none of the overactive of the cytokine storm of what they call it. That means you can get treated 5 minutes from your home, and it's much less expensive. The other factor that has been a big difference about how we approach this science was, at every step of the way, from beginning in 2011, we were concerned about great science and really, really good manufacturing. So we have a closed system which eliminates user error, eliminates interface with air, oxygen. And so by doing those 2 scientific and manufacturing processing lockstep, we have a method that we can bring to the market for $100,000 or less. Now that's 1/10 or 1/5 or much less than the others on the market. And as we can remove cancer entirely for half the patients, and for half of those it's gone for 5 years, that's actually a very cost-effective treatment for the insurance companies to get behind. The insurance companies have told us even if we price this at $200,000, that's a value proposition to them. That's a win, and they would readily approve.
Yeah, to them and the public, frankly.
Oh, yeah.
And so, one question is eligibility. So, just sort of walk me through the patient experience. I mean, do you foresee that the Genius T cell therapy can be widely used? And I know this is something that we've discussed before about sort of democratizing immunotherapy. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, like any other drug, to get approved in the U.S. By the U.S. FDA, we first have to pick one target, and first we'll pick lymphoma. It's not the biggest market, but it's a chip shot, and we also are springboarding on other research done by great research academic people. So we would move there, and then second would be immediately after their lung cancer, which is a huge target. And then eventually, after those approvals, we can move, just like Loxo and other companies have done, to a broad approval, which is not based on the tissue of origin for where the cancer resides, but actually the molecular structure of the cancer, so that the approval could be across a number of different tissues of origin to be approved. And then number 2, anybody who gets approved in the US, you first have to get approved by treating the worst case patients, the patients who have failed at every other treatment, including CAR T. So we would have to be initially at the bottom of the stack, but that's how you start. But since we have a low cost and very, very minimal side effect, we can we can move up that stack so that we can be eventually right after surgery, rather than you get surgery and then you get chemo or radiation. We might be able to be standard of care, that we're right after surgery, and then people can avoid the side effects of chemo and radiation.
Yeah, and this would be huge. And by the way, you're explaining this really well. Thank you for that. And I'm truly excited because I think this is sort of the version 2 of a new paradigm for fighting cancer, or maybe version 2 or 3, 4,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
it's something that I think patients will see more and more, and will have a much better not only outcome, but also patient experience, right? Where they won't be dealing with side effects that have the immediate risk, but also the long-term risks. And, you know, if the patient has a better experience and a better outcome, the rest of the society is better and functions better. So I'm very excited about what you guys are doing at Geneius. So for all of you guys out there listening and that might be interested, Geneius has launched a crowdfunding campaign. And if you wish to learn more, I put the website up here. Please check it out. Please take a look. And if you wish to support it, please make a donation. And what I'd like to do before we part, well, first of all, I want to ask you, Richard, what are the next steps for Geneius? If money gets raised, then where are you going from here?
Yeah, the next step would be we have to reconfirm again that we are as safe as it has been, and reconfirm the effectiveness. So we are preparing a document as we've already talked to the US FDA, but finalizing our document to present to the FDA to bring our T cells into being infused into humans. We've done all the work. We've drawn blood. We've manufactured the T cells. We've tested the T cells that we've manufactured to the specifications that we need to be very effective at killing the cancers. So we've done all that work, and now we just need the approval of the FDA to start a trial at a major university to infuse it into patients and monitor their response to that.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Richard, for sharing all this and joining us today. And we don't seem to have any questions in the chat box, but I have left the link to the campaign, so now it's clickable in the chat box. Yeah. And yeah, this has been fascinating. Like I said, you did a great job explaining all this, and I'm hoping that in time we get to share directly with people what is on the horizon. And again, for those of you who are just joining, this is Richard Brand from Geneius Biotechnology. And thank you again, Richard.
Thank you, Mona. Thanks for all your help. All right. Have a great weekend.
You too. Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.